Um, yeah, so many of you already know me. My name is Mina Ravel, and I'm a resident of Philly. I'm also an active member of our local Sierra Club group in Southeastern PA, and will be moderating today's discussion about EcoHub. EcoHub is the brainchild of Rob Watson, and many thanks to Max Zahnizer, who made the connection with Rob. A lot of you may know Max. He teaches design at Drexel, and he manages a co-working hub, City Coho, that we've missed going to in the past year. Please save your questions until after Rob's very brief educational presentation. I was told it should be about 30 minutes. We'll have a whole hour for a discussion afterwards. We look for alternatives to present to our government, alternatives that are better for public health and the climate. And it's not just Philly, the suburbs are looking for these alternatives as well, which we heard with the discussion with Delaware and Chester County just now. So this is part of our ongoing recorded conversations for education, and it will be found on our website. So welcome, Max and Rob.
Thank you very much, Mina. Max, did you want to say a couple of words since you're kind of one of the main impetuses for this conversation?
I mean, I really want to reserve, I'll keep it super brief because I want to reserve as much time for you to kind of share what EcoHub would be and then have a chat with, you know, what could become a pretty ardent advocate for it with this group, hopefully. And, you know, you'll get the hardest questions from inside this room probably,
sure
which is great.
We look forward to that. We like hard questions.
Yeah, no, I'm just glad Rob and I and a few other colleagues have started kind of having these conversations with folks where I feel like less than 10% of the way through, you know, the sort of crowd of folks in the region that ought to know about it and would want to get behind it and whose interests it would sort of harmonize. And that's what, I guess I'll just say that's what excites me about this, is some version of it could really harmonize what are currently held as mutually exclusive choices, you know, between industry and the public, and between government and, you know, nonprofit advocates. And so, yeah, I'm just excited for y'all to see it and kick the tires pretty hard and talk about the potential of it, you know, one of these maybe living in or near Philly.
Okay, so with your permission, I'll give 30 seconds on my background. I, you know, studied with Amory Lovins and Donella Meadows at Dartmouth College, where I got an energy policy degree. I spent 21 years at the Natural Resources Defense Council leading their international energy program, and during that, and then the Green Buildings program, and part of my remit there was founding the LEED Green Building Rating System, which is how I met Max. So I've been in environmental market transformation for over 35 years. I was did a lot of work on recycling and solid waste through, including the construction demolition waste elements of LEED. And just learned a lot from my brother, who manages solid waste and is a multi-year award winner for recycling innovation in New England, where he lives. Several years ago, I was invited to green an eco-industrial campus, and I wish I could claim credit for being the brainchild behind EcoHub. I'm merely a salesperson and advocate and analyst. George Gitchell is the founder of that. It was his basically brainchild to figure out how to fix all the weak links in the current recycling waste management system, which we'll go into for a second. So, just to complement the sort of industry transformation work that EcoHub represents, I also founded basically a LEED for solid waste standard called SWEEP, which is the Sustainable Materials Environmental Excellence Performance Standard. And we're launching pilots. In fact, Chester County is one of our SWEEP pilots. And so we're very much looking forward to implementing this program in your region and seeing what a difference it can make. And so with that, let me just quickly go into sharing my screen. And I promise you, I will spend most of the time listening to you all and answering your questions, but I will just zip through this. So, you know, we've got a 1970s industrial structure, which in the last few years has largely fallen apart. We have means of disposing of waste that are environmental justice nightmares, particularly regarding incineration. Many landfills are not a lot better. A lot of the practices that they engage in are very damaging to the environment and local communities. They're certainly better than the open dumps that used to be, but there's certainly, you know, with practices such as using coal dust as alternative daily cover and other kinds of practices that, you know, those can create very significant downstream problems. And so hopefully what we can do is break that cycle, which is what the SMART Center, the Sustainable Materials and Advanced Recovery Technology Centers, are intended to do, to fully and comprehensively address end-of-life recovery of materials. We think we can do it in a way that is significantly better environmentally and a lot better economically. And we believe that we have the partnerships with you know, leading manufacturers of advanced sorting technology, as well as material recovery and processing technology to achieve these goals. So, you know, we're stuck in the 1970s as far as, I mean, in 1972, my first job was helping people unload their recyclables at the Tiburon, California drop-off center. And, you know, there have been a couple of bells and whistles added, but basically our mindset is that there's good garbage and bad garbage. And the job of consumers is to separate the good garbage from the bad garbage. We could call good garbage recycling. You know, and frankly, a lot of this is basically a way that manufacturers have diverted attention from their, you know, production of materials and sort of dodging their responsibility and putting it on consumers. Second problem is that we have antiquated equipment that was designed to separate, you know, the anointed recoverable materials. The problem is that the mix of those materials being discarded has changed radically, and these machines are wholly inadequate to properly separate this material.
You haven't addressed that I'm curious about is...
We also have the problem that many consumers, and this is good news and bad news, do a lot of what they call wish cycling. You know, it's stuff that, quote, should be recyclable or should be recycled or should be recyclable. Therefore, we're going to put it in the blue bin and send a message. And, you know, right now the message is that people are too lazy to properly sort their equipment. It's clogging our machines and making our, you know, limited value product even less valuable. We've got a completely broken commodity market that is not able to meet the demands of companies that want to increase recycled content. And so all of these things combined basically result in a system that will max out at, you know, high 30s to low 40s diversion, and everything else ends up going into the garbage. And so what we need to do is completely rethink these ideas. And you know, right now you know, we're like, oh, methane's a problem, so we're going to send another truck for food. Problem is that people don't like separating food. It stinks. It requires them to take up space that they don't have. It's fantastically expensive. I mean, collection is 2/3 of the cost of that process. And even ignoring that, the tip fees required for you know, converting food into fertilizer, whatever, you cannot have, at least under the 19th century economic structure that currently governs our investments, you can't make money on it. So nobody's putting money into it. The ones that are basically end up going out of business, and the process fails. So what we're trying to do is come up with a 21st century approach. that all of the materials in the waste stream have value. And when these materials are mixed together, they're garbage, but when they're separated, they become feedstocks. So if you can separate them effectively, then all of a sudden you have feedstocks that can be properly utilized for conversion into new materials, soil amendments, clean energy, et cetera. So we've developed a machine, and it's not a dirty MRF, because what a dirty MRF is designed to do is to skim, quote, the good garbage from the bad garbage. So you get a little bit of good garbage of not very good quality, because dirty MRFs are kind of like the electric vehicle equivalent of putting a windscreen on a golf cart, right? And you're not going to, unless you're in like the villages in Florida, you're not going to drive a golf cart for your family vehicle. You're going to want a Tesla or a Volt or something that's a real electric vehicle. And so what we've essentially done is created the Tesla version, just purpose built from the ground up to separate everything in the material stream into its constituent parts, with 90 to 95% cleanliness. And then we just put best in class processing technologies. So rather than taking, low value commodities and sending them, God knows where, we basically truck them across, with a forklift or a, conveyor belt, whatever, to, top of the line paper recycling facilities, plastic recovery and cleaning and pelletizing facilities, aerobic, static pile, aerobic composting, anaerobic digestion, et cetera. And so, wherever we have the ability to take the highest and best use of a material, that's what we're going to do with it. And so we've basically pulled together a system. We've done a bunch of evaluation, and the technology is evolving. And, one of the great things about having the waste stream fully separated is that as new technologies come on, we can incubate them and expand them on a campus, and then retire technologies that are older. So that's the basic idea, is just this continuous progress evolution of squeezing the highest and best use out of the materials that come through. We can, each EcoHub, the max diverter is the core separation technology. That's sort of the thing that George invented. And then, the eco-industrial campus is something that comes out of that. Max diverter can separate anywhere from 1,000 to 2,400 tons per day. This is a large industrial scale effort. And the thing about recycling at scale is that it is a dirty industrial process. It's cleaner than taking, and significantly better environmentally than taking virgin materials and processing them in a factory. But the fact is that anything, when you're dealing with millions of tons of material, you're going to have emissions, you're going to have issues, and our job is to try and minimize those issues. And then we can work with the city of Philadelphia to educate the people. And right now, 80% of people's 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle bandwidth is going to that third R, recycle. And the issue is that people suck at recycling. If they didn't, we wouldn't have discard rates in the 30 to 40%. And again, the exceptions that, oh yeah, I put everything in a mason jar, that just proves the rule that, a vanishingly small portion of the people can do it, but the vast majority will not. And so that's just, wish, that's like the most aggressive form of wish cycling. And so what we try and do is take that 2,400 tons per day, and that would be, multiplied by 4 in the city of Philadelphia. Maybe if we focus people's bandwidth on reducing and reusing, then we can only need 3. But, my guess is that it'd be 10, 20 years. I mean, we've had 50 years of 3Rs, and where are we? We've never gotten better than 35% in this country. So the idea that we're going to somehow magically, with all the hundreds of millions of dollars of education, suddenly convert people to doing something that they've not been shown to be willing to do for 50 years, I think that's a fantasy. But what we want to do is restructure the industry so that people do the thing that they're best at doing, at least compared to machines, right? Physics is way better at separating materials than people are. Density, dimension, optical properties, there's equipment out there that can separate everything to 90, 95% purity. We've proven it in Europe, and we want to bring that proof here. You know, and then what people are way better at is picking package A versus package B, or no package at all, right? It's the consumption decision where people have the comparative advantage. Let the machines take care of the third R, focus the education and the activities of the humans on the first two R's, which is where they have a competitive advantage. So basically, you know, one bin means 25 to 40% fewer trucks on the road. The mixed waste goes to the max diverter, we sort it. About 10 to 15% of the material goes to produce clean energy, 80 to 85%. And you know, energy is the lowest value thing to do with materials, but in my opinion, it's better than sticking in a hole. If there's a better way to do it, we won't extract the energy. We'll turn it into something that can be actually used. But until you know, until the technology shows up, you know, right now we're stuck with sort of, you know, at least a less bad alternative. And then about 5%, which we actually hope to be even, you know, significantly less than 5%, is potentially for landfill. It tends to be the grit and stuff like that. But there's some really cool technologies that might be able to turn, you know, the street sweeping rocks and stuff like that into carbon negative aggregate for construction. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So basically, you know, currently you've got, you know, a MRF that might separate plastics to, you know, 70 to 80% purity. And then you get a mixed bale, which goes into the market, and you might get a commodity broker to find a buyer, and you might get $250 a ton for number 1 and number 2 plastics, but number 3 through 7 basically have nowhere to go except the landfill, or, you know, people argue into the incinerator. What we're going to do is we're going to separate each of these plastic types into 90, 95% purity, and then send it into a pelletizing plant where, you know, we further separate it. We chop it, mix it, you know, all the conventional stuff that's done in plastic pelletization. And then what we have is 99% pure pellets by plastic type. And those plastic pellets get sold or converted on site into new materials. And as a result, we get a lot more money for that. And that is right now, rather than sending, you know, those bales somewhere, we're going to convert them on site into a value added product, and possibly even take it to that next step if we can find a local off taker for, say, you know, if there were a Coca-Cola bottling plant, we could get a contract with them. We could turn those pellets into bottles on site and send the bottles to them instead of pellets to to another vendor. A lot will depend on the local situation, but like I said, every EcoHub complex will try and squeeze the highest environmental and economic value out of the materials. So in Norway is probably the closest example. It's a plant that was built by Stadler. It's operated by a Norwegian waste company, ROAF. That performance shows that 95% of the materials that come into the facility are separated into clean and consistent material streams of 90 to 95% plus purity. And it's a reliable complex. Its uptime is 97%. And this is what the facility that we're proposing to bring. There's another slightly earlier facility in Granada, Spain, very similar performance. Sort of the beta version of the max diverter was in Roseville, California. And when the markets were not completely tanked, it was doing a separation of up to almost 70% of the materials coming through from a mixed waste stream at that facility. Since the collapse of the facility and the back end markets, that diversion has gone down significantly. The Roseville plant has always operated based on available markets. So for example, when glass was in the toilet, they never ran their glass separation machines and just sent it to the adjacent landfill. So the diversion rate from that facility has varied significantly, but it's never had an environmental complaint, nor was any of its material ever rejected by Green Fence, while that was an issue. Now, we recognize that a lot of people might be nervous. You know, we've talked about mixed waste in one bin, and we recognize that that might make people nervous about, quote, killing recycling. In fact, we're killing the black bin, not the blue bin. But we have the ability to phase construction of these facilities so that we can keep, you know, people doing separation for as long as they want. You know, if the city has the millions of dollars sitting around to fund extra trucks, blocking traffic, spewing diesel fumes, they're welcome to do that. You know, otherwise they could save, you know, millions of dollars, have fewer trucks, and mix the waste and send it to us directly. We don't care whether it comes in a single bin. We don't care if it comes in a single stream, dual stream, or in mixed waste. Physics doesn't change because of the incoming composition of the material. So, you know, our objective is to take all of the materials, and, you know, one of the key things that we're going to need to do is to get an actual waste characterization of the waste in Philadelphia, because that will have a big impact on what happens on the back end. You know, we're using U.S. waste characteristics right now in our initial assessment. And, you know, based on this waste mix and depending upon the back end technologies, you know, and the location of the facility, you know, they can cost between 650 and 700 million. We're not looking for any tax breaks. You know, we've been told by a number of large investment banks that with a contract, they would be happy to do project finance. So we're not worried about that piece of it. And we think that we can definitely make a lot of money for the city of Philadelphia in terms of lower costs for waste production, as well as you know, jobs, taxes, et cetera. This is an artist's conception of where an EcoHub facility might be located in the Hilco Refinery Center. We've not spoken with Hilco. You know, we know they're planning a logistics center. We'll see how that fares, you know, compared to the Fairless Hills thing 30 miles away, which is basically the exact same facility, closer to New York City. This, you know, would be enough acreage to do 4 EcoHub facilities, but, you know, it's about 240 acres. We would need about 60 acres, 50 to 60 acres per facility. And we could use some of this, none of this. There might be a better place for it. Right now, this is a good piece of centrally located land that does not appear to be too close to residential places. You know, like I said, as green as recycling is, it's still large industrial facilities. The waste doesn't move itself. We need trucks. So the farther away from people we can keep that stuff, the better. We've done an artist conception for, you know, a California site. It's a little bit more spread out than you would find in an urban site. A lot less, there'd be a lot less pavement, for example. But this is kind of what it would look like. You know, everything is indoors. There's no open waste facilities. You know, material comes into a tip floor under negative pressure. We've got MERV 15 fans that will, and charcoal filters that'll exhaust it. And I won't say there's no odor. You know, garbage stinks, but it'll be way better than a landfill, and certainly better than an incinerator. And our job is to minimize the impacts. But you know, I'm not here to lie to you that, you know, I can't say no odor. I can't say no emissions, because right now we don't have the technology to do that. But you know, maybe there will be that technology at some point. The other interesting piece is the administration, the Center of Excellence. It's a dedicated space on the EcoHub. And if people want to learn new skills, people working for EcoHub who want to learn new skills and, quote, move up the ladder, we'll be able to do that. If local folks from the local community want to get a job there and maybe not have the skills, we'll provide training for jobs that are available or potentially available. We will be emphasizing training of underserved communities, veterans, long-term unemployed, et cetera. You know, we hope to do R&D on new products. One of my sort of hobby horses is creating 3D printer inks out of recycled material. We'll have a maker's lab on site. We'll have repair labs where people can, we'll try and do our best to recover technology, electronics, appliances, furniture that, seems to be in decent shape, and try and, give people lessons on how to repair it, et cetera, if they want. Incubate new businesses, provide space for education, communities, meetings, conferences, et cetera, around zero waste and sustainable materials management. The intent is to deliver knowledge economy skills and on technology and bringing together education, employment, and economic sustainability. So it's not just, a couple of people in a garage. We've got very large, accomplished partners, both on the construction and development side, as well as on the system integration and equipment side. Every piece of equipment in the max diverter is guaranteed and bonded not only by the manufacturer, but also by Stadler. So we have a set of performance criteria. They've reviewed the engineering, and we are literally the only recycling system on the planet guaranteed by not only equipment manufacturers, but also the system integrators to perform as engineered. We'll be partnering with IBM, local colleges, other organizations to run the system, the Center of Excellence, as well as to optimize management of the facility. As I've mentioned, we've had a number of large financial institutions very interested in EcoHub if we can get the waste contract. If we can't find off-takers for the material, we have a large product and commodity broker that has agreed to be our backstop at 15-day terms. So we know that we can sell the material that we produce. If the full EcoHub gets built out, we expect around 10,000 jobs, directly, indirectly, and induced. So probably about 2,500 would be working directly on the campus, and then local economic multipliers in the region would produce other jobs. Our target is 95% diversion. We believe we can do better. Looking at the current pricing for collection, processing, and disposal of materials, we believe we can save the city over $100 million a year from an EcoHub Smart Center. And based on an initial WARM analysis, we think we can reduce emissions by up to 4 million tons of CO2 per year. We do want to do a MEBCalc life cycle evaluation of our options, but we haven't done that yet. So we're still in the process of determining what the best back-end technology suite is. And so we'll bring all the tools that we have the ability to bring to bear on it for that purpose. And then finally, route consolidation will, when you reduce routes from 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or 3 to 2, you basically get 25 to 40% fewer garbage trucks on the road, which means fewer emissions, less traffic, less noise, more safety. We do intend to have a CHP system on the site to produce electricity and power. Will be self-sufficient. We're trying to, we've got a closed loop water treatment system, and we will require minimal makeup water. We'll see how much rain we can capture. We're not going to be discharging water into any water bodies. Everything will be treated on site, and what we treat will be recycled, and then whatever sludge we have will be also treated on site. So that's the summary. Happy to go into any questions. I've been seeing a lot of things popping up in the chat, but I'll just let folks ask questions, or maybe Max, you can help me, or Meenal, you can help me run through the chat. It's up to you guys.
I'll start. I know there's going to be a lot of questions about burning, so we'll save that for a bit. But I didn't see anything about reuse on here. Yeah.
Like I said, EcoHub will certainly encourage educational programs for reuse, but our job is to take care of stuff that ends up in the bin. We can certainly work with the city of Philadelphia to educate people about the consumption decision, about the ability to reuse. I did mention that, if we recover material that people throw out that seems to be in decent shape, we'll have repair cafes and places where people can repair and basically for their sweat own the thing afterwards. If people want to bring material, so that there is that element of it, but most of the stuff that comes to us will be coming by trucks that are either operated by the city of Philadelphia or a private company.
I see. So there isn't space for like a reuse hub as part of that Center for Excellence.
That's the intention. Yes. No. Our intention, like I said, is to have a repair place and give people skills to repair electronics, appliances, furniture, etc. And that would be part of that sort of.
But it wouldn't come through the trucks. It would come a different way. Got it.
We can. That's another possible way of doing that. Again, these are some of the. This is a vanishingly small piece of the waste stream, so we haven't been focusing on it, but it is an area that we are very concerned about. So, we absolutely would love ideas, and we could provide space for local reuse advocacy and operational organizations on the campus, and figure out how to get that material and get it back out to people.
Okay. I think there's a question about examples. I saw on your slides Oslo and maybe a reference to Spain. And is there something in the US?
Like I said, the beta version, the closest thing to the separation system is the one at Roseville. And again, that's a very manual process. That was put in place about 15 years ago. We're not, separating waste by hand is a very dirty, dangerous, and just low quality job. And, the robotics have gotten a lot better to the extent that people are working on EcoHub. We want them to be, quality assistants, logistics, mechanics, salespeople, right? Good jobs. So, to the extent that we can keep people off the pick line, we will.
Okay. And I think Joy Baxter had raised her hand.
Yes, I have several questions. First, what is your projected tipping fee?
We guarantee that we will be 20% below anything out there. So in Philadelphia, we're talking, 40s to 50s range right now. This is a negotiable thing. The tip fee represents 15 to 20% of our revenue. So, it's not a huge, it's not a make or break thing. We want to share our success with the city.
And in Philadelphia, we don't have that many places, traditional composting places that are accepting food waste. Where is your proposed food waste stream going to be going?
So food waste principally will go to anaerobic digestion. And so, we've got the ability to separate green waste from food waste, based on the physics of it. And so, we'll have feedstock stream of 95% pure food going into the AD.
And that would be handled on that site? That's
correct. Yeah, everything is on the campus.
Okay, and that includes the waste to energy portion?
Yes. We would have CHP. I mean, to the extent we would not do any direct incineration. In other words, we're not doing any exothermic reaction types of facilities. We would basically pyrolyze, some of the waste that doesn't, that falls through, like the 2-inch minus stuff, that we can't figure out how to separate otherwise. But minimal, less than 10%, 10 to 15%. Right now we don't know what to do with the vast majority of textiles. So it's either sticking them in a hole. The current infrastructure is maxed out at 15%. We might be able with new technologies to double that. We still have 70% of the textiles in the waste stream to do something with. And so that's we can capture some of the polypro from carpet. Nylon from carpet, those are all things that we can capture using conventional technology. So, maybe half of it, but then what are we going to do with the other half? Because there's just no infrastructure to handle it.
And you mentioned at the very beginning of the talk that part of the problem is the streams going to reuse. I forgot exactly the name of it. So what streams do you have to plastic producers for the plastic pellets that you're producing?
So we would, we've talked with Anheuser-Busch, we've talked with Pepsi, Coke, Procter and Gamble. So we're going to be creating direct offtake contracts with large manufacturers to get either a pellet sales contract or make bottles. So if there were a Pepsi bottling company locally, I've got 6 of these projects going on, so I don't know that level of detail about Philadelphia. But if there were an off-taker like that, we might be able to, depending upon where they're getting the bottles from, we might be able to be a supplier of that.
So it's, in the Norway example, have you been able to find waste streams, correctly separate the plastic so it is going to reuse?
So in Norway, they have a slightly different setup. So what's in Norway is proof of our ability to separate the waste. It's not a full EcoHub. Okay. But everything that they separate does go into the European market and does get sold.
So do you have any previous example of separating the plastic to pellets?
Well, like I said, again, once we have the plastic separated, then it can be pelletized, right? The key problem with most of these new technologies is the separation task, right? People are not good at it, and then it costs too much to do the truck. We know that we can separate the plastic. Once you have the plastic separated, the pelletization process is well known. It's all around the world, and we know exactly what to do. We also know that most of the large bottlers and most of the large consumer product companies are going begging for recycled content for their materials because they just can't get the supply. So we're not worried about that either.
Let's see what Carol has to ask.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate this presentation. I really appreciate what your company's trying to do. And I hope that it remains open to changing over time. It sounds like it is trying to be very flexible and adaptive. And I hope it continues to, because maybe we'll make a difference and, may either produce bioplastics that can be composted or some other solution. So, because we all want to reduce plastics as much as possible. But anyway, so my questions are, so let me understand this last point about only up to 10 to 15% of textiles, because there's such a magnitude of them, could be, I'll just say recycled. And you said you will be burning 10 to 15%, and will you be extracting gas from it, or what? Could you explain that again?
Sorry, yeah, there's a lot to keep track of. I get confused myself. So just taking a look at textiles, if you look at the global textile market, right now, only about 15% of the discarded textiles are currently being able to be handled by the Goodwill, Salvation Army, et cetera. And of that, maybe 50% or so ends up getting shipped overseas, and then once it gets there, maybe another 20 to 30% isn't even used, right? So right now the infrastructure for handling a lot of textiles is just not in place. There are some new technologies out that are figuring out how to separate fibers. There's a fiber separation company called EcoHub that can make, a variety of indoor construction materials out of it. There are a couple of startups that are figuring out how to separate natural and synthetic fibers. I mean, so there is activity going on, and an EcoHub would be a perfect place for those things, right? Because we can get them the material that they want at any volume that they want. And so that's one of the things that we hope to do, is to be able to integrate that. So, but Max sent me a link about the clothing recovery program in Philadelphia, and it was some impressive number, like 1 million pounds or something like that. But when you look at the total fraction of textiles generated in Philadelphia, it was well less than 1%, right? And so there's nothing wrong with those programs. We want to encourage them as much as possible, but at the industrial city scale that we're talking at, at the end of the day, you're going to end up, again, pick a number, 50% of the textiles generated, and the question is, what do you do with that? And so some people might say, we think it's better to put it in the landfill. Who knows? I haven't done the life cycle assessment. Maybe it is environmentally better. But economically, it would definitely not be better. But we'll look at it. Our mission is highest and best use, and we're trying to bring more sophisticated tools. Right now, it's basically experience, some economics, some very modest environmental analysis. But as we get deeper, we're absolutely going to go into more detail.
And I also had a question. I don't know if I missed it. Are you going to have a composting facility specifically for bioplastics? I think this is very possible, but it doesn't exist yet in the United States. So is that possible?
Again, what I've seen from bioplastics is that, that in theory, there should be no difference between theory and practice, but in practice, there actually is. I know that, we're going to be trying for, U.S. Compost Council certification. And I don't know a lot of certifications that, do well with bioplastics in them. But that doesn't mean that we can't, we're going to be using an aerated static composting technology out of Minnesota that really chews through a lot of stuff. So we're hoping that, we can get that through, and we'll probably do some testing initially, seeing, some loads with bioplastics, others with not. I'll be honest with you, the LCAs of bioplastics that I've seen, not great. If you look at the whole thing, you're actually probably better, even though it's pulling fossil fuels out, the overall environmental impact might actually be better. It's sort of a case of the cure being worse than the problem. But we're open to it. If they can find a better mousetrap, we're happy to encourage it.
My understanding is that the biggest difference and holdback is that bioplastics require 60 to 180 days to actually decompose, and no composting facility goes on a cycle that long. They all go on shorter cycles. But what were you saying? That is it the production of bioplastics that's also produces toxins and gases, or what?
Yeah, again, you look at the agro-industrial complex. You look at the fertilizers, you look at the water, you look at the pesticides, you look at the transportation, you look at the conversion processes, and those all stack up pretty well. There may be bioplastics that do really well. So much of this is dependent on the facility and what you assume the alternative is. And that's one of the complexities of life cycle assessment. But I've seen a couple where it's not super obvious that it produces a net environmental benefit. Again, I'm not close to it, but I haven't seen anything that indicates it's a slam dunk.
Right, but you're also working to deal with materials that are even more toxic. So the point is that they're producing these bioplastics. They're producing them a lot in California. They produce here, and they're just going into landfills, or I don't know.
Again, that may be.
Could you consider? Is there enough flexibility in the organization to? I know it's a big investment, a composting facility.
Sure. Well, actually, composting is really cheap, but most of the windrow things are not great. They produce way more methane than anybody wants to admit. The windrow turners are often uncontrolled diesel, spewing lots of particulates. They tend to attract a lot of vermin, odor, blah blah blah. It's an industrial scale process, so that's why. But this aerated static pile aerated composting facility seems to be pretty good so far. So, we're cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to do that. And, my guess is that bioplastics, frankly, would probably be better off in our biogreen pyrolysis machine.
Yeah.
And
that produces what kinds of gases?
A lot of it depends on, so basically, you know, it basically uses heat input to gasify materials. And then depending upon the input, you know, we're going to have fairly pure inputs. So we have a pretty decent sense of what's going to go in and what's going to come out. You know, the syngas that comes out have a lot of hydrogen, have some carbon monoxide in it, some methane, some other, you know, hydrocarbons in it. Say that again. Dioxins and other furans. Yeah, possibly. I have not, you know, siloxanes and stuff like that. Most of what happens is that all the gas goes through synthesis and production. So it's not, again, it's not burned directly. It's basically heated, gas comes out, you have char left over. And really a lot of what comes out depends on what goes in. So, you know, obviously our job is to keep things like batteries and other, you know, sources of heavy metals and stuff like that out of that waste. Can we guarantee that 100%? No. But you know, everything will be tested regularly. We will not have any direct emissions you know, from that gas to the outside air.
Did you say you could use the gas for operations?
Yeah, gas. We're right now. The intention is to. We've got a couple of different things that we can use with the gas. If it's, you know, we're going to convert a fair amount of it into low sulfur diesel to run our trucks and possibly run. You know, I mean, in order to recycle paper, you need to heat up a lot of water. We may be able to do that mostly with solar. We may not. You know, again, that will require a level of engineering that we haven't gotten to yet. But you know. Wherever we can substitute, you know, a conventional fossil fuel for a recovered fuel, then we'll do that. You know, and we're going to, you know, this is a big industrial facility. We require about 25 megawatts of power. Most of that will be produced on site. We'll have probably 10 megawatts of solar. So, you know, like I said, everything we can do to minimize that. And then we've got, you know, trucks we can fuel with the compressed gas, et cetera, instead of diesel or other sorts of, you know, regular natural gas.
Okay. This is Rob.
Yeah.
This is a group.
No, we're getting into the weeds.
No. Actually, I think we need the opportunity to design this the way we would want. And I know the participants on this call, including myself, and we're opposed to burning anything. I mean, Bill McKibben recently said we've got to stop burning stuff. So how can we
find me a better way to do it? I won't burn it. I mean, it's just like, it's very simple. You got a better idea, give it to me.
Every time you use the word CHP or pyrolysis, I hear my friends flinch. I can feel that.
Yeah, but the reality is that you cannot melt metal without burning something. You cannot wash, extrude, melt plastic without burning something. You know, we've actually engineered a paper plant that almost completely eliminates the need for fossil fuels to heat the water to pulp the paper, but you still have to have a lot of hot water for that process. These are industrial processes, and we're trying to figure out how to do it. If you've got a better idea, we are all ears.
Okay. I think Mike's hand is up, and then Lynn.
Okay, thanks, Meenal. So I think I caught the answer to the first one, but just to confirm, has the smarter EcoHub process been done anywhere yet?
The full EcoHub has not been done anywhere. You know, so we've got a choice between proven failure of the existing system or potential success with a new system. That's the way I look at it.
Sure. Are there other communities that are currently considering it?
Absolutely. We have quite the line out the door now. And the minute we get one actually going, we expect it to be around the block.
Okay, can you name any of them so we know?
I'm sure, yeah. We're looking at Frostburg in Western Maryland. We're looking at Atkinson, Illinois to service Chicago. We're looking at Phoenix. We've been talking with some native people there. Let's see, where else? We've been, you know, after an initial failed attempt at Hartford, we've got that conversation going. We're actually trying to propose a full complex for Rikers Island in New York City. So we've got, you know, several dozen places that we are looking at. We just had a conversation with Denver yesterday. So, you know, these are big, complicated projects. They will take years to go through the engineering and permitting and conversation process. And, you know, we're just spinning as many plates as we can.
Okay. And are any of these privately financed already?
Again, you know, we are close to getting some private financing into our Maryland project. Illinois could be close behind that. All of the banks, most of the conventional banks want to see a 20-year contract with a rated municipal entity. And that's, you know, that's really, really hard for a bureaucrat to justify doing something, quote, unproven. People are far more comfortable with proven failure than with potential success.
Interesting. And I noticed the SMART acronym, and that struck me because that is used in zero waste programs to mean save money and reduce trash, or pay as you throw. Would you consider renaming that so it's not confused in the zero waste discussion with that program?
So we'll certainly think about it. I mean, we're all for pay as you throw. I mean, that's, you know, and extended producer responsibility. I mean, you know, this is not the only tool in the conversation. You know, we're only dealing with one piece of the sustainable materials management cycle. And obviously there are a whole raft of other tools that need to be brought to bear in order to make this, you know, really work.
Got it. And you mentioned that tipping fees are only 15 to 20% of the revenue. Where's the rest coming from?
Sales of products, right? So this is a completely different business model. We're not selling low quality commodities. We are selling products. We're selling recycled paper. We're selling recycled pulp, e-flute, craft paper, pellets of various sorts rather than undifferentiated bales. We're selling, you know, fertilizer from anaerobic digestion and gas either to a local pipeline or for use on site to us. We're selling low sulfur diesel. We're selling, you know, the only commodity really that makes sense for us to sell is metals, and those, you know, markets for that are still pretty decent. So that's you know, we're everything that we can add value to on site we are, and we're selling products, not commodities. That's the big difference in the business model. Okay, diapers, for example. So we can separate diapers into their cellulose, their plastic, and their superabsorbent polymer. There's a technology developed by P&G that's commercialized in Italy. We're going to bring that over. We're going to run the diapers through it, and we've got, you know, off takers for all of those components. P&G would love to get superabsorbent polymer back because it's expensive, and they've got a great story to tell. So that's, you know, the Polypro, you know, the Pure Cycle process, also developed by Procter and Gamble. That's going to be on our site. So again, we've got, you know, we've lined up, you know, ways to recycle difficult things, and our ability to capture the entire waste stream gives us the ability to put some of these, you know, more interesting technologies on the same site.
And how much of your revenue would be from selling RINs from digester gas? These are renewable fuel standard credits.
Yeah, we didn't really. Yeah, I think the RINs are part of that. I mean, it's really small. I mean, the anaerobic digestion piece of it is actually a money loser. If you allocate it properly, we might be able to make it less of a loser by selling RINs and also by selling carbon credits. But that's kind of a loss leader. And it's you know, that's the one technology on the site that doesn't actually make money by itself, based on the current analysis. And again, I'm not saying that you know, further analysis wouldn't make it look more profitable, but right now the numbers are not penciling out for that technology. But we're doing it, A, because of the story, B, because it closes loop, C, because it's a really difficult material to deal with, the food waste, and it just, you know, just needs to be done.
Would you be open to someone partnering to do aerobic composting?
Of food?
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a technology that doesn't have all the problems I've described that are known with food composting, like I said, all ears.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any successful large-scale food composting program yet. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it's really hard to do and hard to do.
We had one and Waste Management killed it, actually.
Yeah, I remember that it was decent. I mean, you know, yeah, I think I remember hearing about that, and they
Wilmington.
after Waste Management took over, the complaints went through the roof. That was it was a Delaware site, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the Wilmington Organic Recycling Center.
Yep. Yeah, I remember reading
If you want a successful one, look to Prince George's County, Maryland, and Montgomery County is making money on their program as well.
Yeah.
But if I can just ask my last couple of questions, Mino, and then I'll hand it off. And it was interesting about the digestion being a loss, because I'm seeing a lot of other ones being built and proposed for food waste digestion, apparently because they're cashing in on these RINs. So thanks for that feedback.
They're also charging a huge amount of money for, pardon my interruption, but they're charging a huge tip fee. And, you know, people are willing to pay that right now, but, you know, anyway, so, and then they have to get the food there. I haven't seen it pencil out.
Interesting. I'm sure, you know, you're competing against someone trying to do that on the same site with this RNG Philly project.
You know, I would be happy to give that money losing prospect to somebody else. They can make it work. God bless them.
Right on. So last question, what percentage of the material going into your process would be burned or incinerated or pyrolyzed on site versus how much off site also?
Yeah, so mostly the thing, so, you know, I don't know how you would characterize what we do with wood, right? We're gonna convert that into biochar, which is, you know, obviously we're not going to take, you know, painted wood and turn it into biochar. That'll be a different kind of char. But, you know, the pyrolysis and torrefaction process, you know, is a great way of turning that into a really, really high value product. They're using it in Europe to improve livestock health, to reduce methane emissions from livestock. They're huge. I mean, they are a decade ahead of what we know and do with biochar. And so, you know, that, you know, all of the quote virgin wood would go through that process, because that's a really high value fertilizer and food amendment for livestock, et cetera. And then the mixed dry organics, you know, textiles, rubber. You know, I mean, again, you can do a little bit with tire rubber, but there's not a huge amount you can do right now. You know, we tried to put it on soccer fields and ended up with cancer clusters all over the U.S. So, you know, again, depending upon how much tire waste we assume in the waste stream, that would be part of it. Some of the rubbers. You know, but pretty much everything else. I mean, again, there might be some plastic shards that for whatever reason we just can't separate and they end up in the mixed thing. We'll separate them with a, you know, sink float thing. We'll skim it and we'll probably just, you know, stick that. There's like 5% residue from the diapers that would go into the pyrolysis. Everything going off site would be inert and would go to a landfill. We would not send it to, you know, anything but a landfill. So there's no quote incinerate. You know, again, technically, you know, because pyrolysis is an endothermic reaction, not an exothermic reaction. Technically, it's not incineration, but you know, we can have a conversation about that. So we don't technically incinerate anything on site. We would, you know, like I said, I don't want to apply heat to anything if I can help it. But right now, I don't have better options for a bunch of stuff. And if anybody's got better options for it, you know, send them to me.
Okay, I know Lynn is next, but I think Joy may have some answer to that. She mentioned on the text chat box, she said restive heating. Have you heard of that?
Oh, just resistive heating. I mean, it's what we all do somewhere in our house.
Okay.
Yeah, the BioGreen pyrolysis technology actually has a really interesting technology. It's basically a resistance heated spiral that, as it sort of augers the material through, uses electricity to heat, you know, a metal element that augers the material through. That heat gasifies the product, and then the char works its way out. So it's so far the best technology that I've seen, but maybe another one maybe a better one will come up.
Did you exhaust your list, Mike?
I did, but if I can give a quick comment, there's one of your competitors out there promoting something similar. When I first was approached by them last year, they were saying that for tires, plastics, some of those things that you're talking about, that they would use pyrolysis or gasification, one of those types of what we would consider, and what EPA and EU also consider, incineration technologies, for that small portion, because they thought it was better than landfilling it. After meeting with their engineers and talking to their business people, they agreed to drop that part of their project, and also to drop the part that involved taking the digested municipal waste and thinking that's appropriate for farm fields, and instead send them to landfills. And now it actually pretty closely matches the zero waste hierarchy, and we're actually helping them get into some of the same communities that you just mentioned that you want to get into. Mm-hmm. So just a heads up that if you did change that aspect of your process to conform with the zero waste hierarchy, we would be happy to roll out the welcome mat to numerous communities that we're working with around the country to get you talking to some of the local governments that we're working with. But so long as pyrolysis, biochar, torrefaction, same basic ideas are part of your process, is something that we would be committed to stopping.
Okay.
Even biochar?
Yes, absolutely. Biochar is pyrolysis, which is defined and regulated as a type of incineration by EPA. That's not.
But the product is really valuable and useful.
Yes, that's how it's sold. But the toxicity issues, which are pretty widely ignored, are severe, with dioxins, pHs, there's lower temperature chemical reactions.
Please send me anything you've got on that, because we want to we want to make the best decision. I mean, I take strong disagreement with EPA on a number of issues, and same with the EU. And a lot of things that they've said in the past have changed. But I'm again about the highest and best use, and we can agree or disagree over what that means.
Okay, Lynn, you ready?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, can't see me. So a lot of my questions were already answered, but okay, about capturing food from the collection of garbage. I mean, I can't quite visualize it. I know that when you throw stuff in a bag and it goes in the truck and it gets compressed, the food is liquid or whatever, and it squirts all over the place. So everything gets contaminated with food waste. And then somehow you're going to gather it all back up. Well, I don't know how that's possible. I'm assuming that when you have plastic and glass and other materials, they're going to need to be washed because they're full of the food waste, right? So I'm thinking about how efficient that is, or inefficient really. And I guess, just an educational program to get people to actually, put their food waste someplace where it can be collected might be a better answer.
It has literally failed everywhere in the United States where they've tried it. It's just too expensive. People don't want to do it. It stinks. They don't have room for it. You can't even get them to do the nice stuff, let alone the nasty stuff. If we could, that would be great, but you're still sending trucks and traffic and cost. It's just, And so, we get a lot of that question about, the feasibility of it. And it actually, based on what we've seen in Europe and in California, there's less contamination than you would think. I mean, obviously the wet dry contamination is an issue. Getting, your paper stained with food And a little bit of that happens, but the reality is that less than 50% of the fiber stream gets put into the blue bin anyway. And so we're capturing twice as much fiber by getting everything in the black bin. If an extra few percent of that ends up in the compost pile instead of into the fiber recovery, that's fine. We're still way ahead of the business as usual structure. And so, a lot of what's not considered, a lot of the paper recovery facilities right now are designed for they were designed in the 80s when dual stream was a thing. And they're very sensitive to contamination. Right now, we can design facilities that can have significantly more contamination. We've got new technologies that can strengthen the fibers of the things that it might have been weakened by, contamination with food. And so, there are technologies that will enable us to capture more fiber. And again, the very worst that happens is, the food, something gets really, contaminated with food, it'll go into composting or possibly anaerobic digestion. But, mostly into composting. So I don't think it's as big a deal as a lot of people make of it, but it does, our kitchen waste tends to be fairly segregated from the rest of the waste in the household. There might be some paper towels and stuff like that ended up getting it, a little bit of packaging, but once you get that into the washing and again, a process that's designed to handle the material coming out of the max diverter, then we can recover the fiber. That sludge either goes to composting or possibly to be thermally treated.
Okay. What?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, so you mentioned making low sulfur diesel for your trucks, and I'm wondering if you've been asked before whether you would consider doing electric trucks instead and like skip the whole diesel thing.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, we're going to have, like I said, probably about 10 megawatts of electricity on the site. The machines and everything use about 25. So, we can, it depends on how you want to allocate it. We have thought about, electricity has to come from somewhere. And whether or not, again, we just have more needs than we can produce with photovoltaics on that site. I mean, we've covered almost every square foot with fairly high, quality panels. So again, it's an allocation issue, if you want to call it, electric trucks that are produced by, that powered by the CHP or the PV or whatever, we can do that.
Well,
we're still going to have the, when we can agree to disagree on this, or, if we do the life cycle analysis and it turns out to be better, we may end up throwing a lot of the stuff that we would, convert thermally into the landfill and figure we'd just kick that can down the road.
Okay. So are you opposed to getting electricity off the grid?
Philadelphia and it depends on what the mix is. It's not obvious that having a lot of coal-fired electricity going into a garbage truck is better than having syngas from recovered materials. Again, it's all fungible. If you're digging it up, whether it's coal or gas, leaks, whatever, we're if you're not doing it with the recovered material, you're doing it with something else. And obviously we're trying to figure out how to minimize all those needs so we don't have to do that.
Yeah, there is wind energy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, can you sign up for wind energy and get that off the grid?
Again, that's sort of, the electrons from a windmill, they go into the grid. They don't, so it's a transaction.
Well, I get that thing about the electrons, believe me. But the thing is, if you invest in wind energy and send your money there, that's what encourages the wind companies.
Yeah,
and
I designed the REX piece of lead. I'm very familiar with the concept.
Okay.
Okay.
Last question I have was, is your business model prepared for the future when there's going to be less plastic packaging? Like, will you easily, how is that going to affect your bottom line?
We recognize that the waste stream is changing. And, we're seeing more composites, we're seeing less paper, we're seeing more plastic, but it could be less plastic. That's one of the purposes of the Center of Excellence. As the composition of the ton changes, we're going to have to figure out what to do with that, and extract the highest and best use out of it. Again, if we're super successful, we'll end up closing down all those EcoHubs, but I don't see that happening in my life. So we recognize that at worst, it'll slow the growth. Right now there's enough room for 700 EcoHubs in the US. If we build 500, right, and then transition those out, the world will be a better place.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes. Carol and Joy have their hands up, and then I think Jim had a quick one.
Well, how do you want to do it, Mina?
Go, Jim, and then Carol and Joy.
Yeah, it is quick. So when a thin plastic bag gets into the plant, does the whole plant shut down? And I'm not sure what I want your answer to be, but
yeah. So obviously winders and cloggers like plastic film are an issue. We actually have a patented shredder that takes care of most of that stuff. So our system is designed to avoid a lot of the problems. Like we don't have any star screens. We use ballistic separators and stuff like that. So, we have taken a lot of steps to avoid those kinds of shutdown, problems.
So I'll go ahead so I have 3 questions for you. I may throw them all out just to save time, throw them to you to save time. One of them is, how has House Bill 1808 that was passed in 2020 affected your work? I'm sure you know about it, but
I do not. I'm not familiar with that.
That was a Pennsylvania bill that, to put it simply anyway, redefined recycling to include the burning of plastics. So I was wondering whether that had an effect on the feasibility of an EcoHub, its operations, its profitability, or what? Should I go on?
If it were my choice, I wouldn't burn anything.
Yeah. So you're not even, you don't know that it's had any effect on the planning of EcoHub.
No, I can tell you categorically it has not. Okay. I wasn't even aware of it. Again, if I could find something to do with that number 7 plastic, I would. Yeah.
And another question was, I wanted to know a little bit more about your extended producer responsibility partnerships. Exactly, are you going to be trying to work with them to improve their products, or to get them to change their design and reduce packaging and so on, what we all want from those laws?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, obviously EPR, we could be piece of that. And I'm sure, we could work with, Unilever and other companies through the Center of Excellence to come up with, reduced packaging. It's in their economic best interest to reduce those costs as well. We're happy to help that. So we're not, that would be more of a legislative thing. We're, like I said, we're just trying to clean up on, we're kind of a diaper, right? We're on the end of the pipeline and we're doing our best there. There's all sorts of other upstream stuff that we can certainly contribute to, but that's not our emphasis.
Right. So, now I'm getting into the corporate responsibility stuff. So that would be a big help, because the legislature is going to go to the recyclers like you to get your inputs, and it would be really helpful. The community would greatly appreciate if people, entities like yours would try to push them in that direction.
Well,
and my last, pardon?
100%. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And then my last point is about environmental justice issues. And what I'm thinking about is, around the world, the people who do best the job of picking up the trash, moving it, sorting it, getting where it needs to be, are the people who live in that community. And so therefore but they're at risks, right? People who work in those facilities are exposing themselves to unhealthy conditions. And so I wanted to ask about whether that's been part of the planning in terms of working conditions, pay, targeting the jobs for Philadelphia and surrounding communities. I just want to add also, the people who work in those communities do that job best. where there are examples where they brought in outside commercial companies. They don't do as good a job as the people who care about their communities.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's my last question.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I think our average wage for an EcoHub would be in the high 20s per hour. So we will not have anything certainly below 15, higher if we can. We will have local hiring preferences. We will have training programs for people in the local community. First-time offenders, release, people long-term unemployed. We want to do in excess of that. And I think not having, you mentioned, electric trucks. We're going to try and figure out how to minimize the amount of diesel trucks coming in and out. If we have trucks that are taking materials to warehouses outside of EcoHub, we're going to, either convert those to, some sort of gas or electricity. We've thought, for example, in New York about converting their fleet to electricity. So we're absolutely open to doing that. I can't say zero emissions because, zero is a very, very fraught number. But, our job is to minimize the pollution, and we'll take every closed loop opportunity to do that. And, a lot of the, one of the things that we don't want to do is send trash trains through other low income communities and put trash in somebody else's low income community. I mean, it's if we're just kicking the problem somewhere else, what kind of social justice is that, right? We believe that we should try and keep things as local as possible, and be a significant contributor to the community. And so we appreciate this opportunity to hear from you all, and we will, absolutely consider, everything that you said. We're not going to be doctrinaire about anything, except that, it's highest and best use.
Joy, I think.
Yes, you mentioned possibly getting a life cycle assessment. Can you tell me more about that? And is it going to be done through an independent organization?
Yeah, so actually, Mike, maybe you can help me with this. I've got 2 emails into the gentleman who did MEBCalc, and we want to take our analysis to the next level, because again, there could be things that we're not looking at, and I would appreciate you, if you have a list of questions about dioxins and stuff like that, I can certainly send that to the manufacturer of, BioGreen, and see what they've done. They've done very, very extensive analysis of their components. So, if you've got particular chemicals of concern that you want to look at from particular inputs, I would be happy to put those questions to them. And so, in SWEEP, we have MEBCalc, which is a life cycle assessment tool designed specifically for waste, designed by a colleague of Mike, and in fact, somebody who Mike introduced us to. And so I've been trying to get a hold of these folks and to have them do an assessment of the various options for EcoHub. And if we find that there are better alternatives compared to what we're doing, then we will adjust our back end to accommodate that.
And I know in my township, we have a zero waste tipping fee for yard waste or the brush. That would be hard to compete with. What is the justification for yard waste going to your facility over that?
Again, if there is a well-established supply chain for the yard waste, we're not interested in disrupting any successful business in a community. So if you've got your yard waste problem solved, then we're not going to touch it, right? That doesn't make sense for us. If there's an existing business in there that's already doing something, rather than creating a competing thing on site, we'll just send it to them. We'll send the material to them, because again, it just makes more sense. We're not the Borg trying to come in and resistance is futile. We want to work with the local community and the local infrastructure.
Sorry,
Right. I still see, using my compost bin out back and still, having a bag to take to the thrift store now and then, like the reuse part of it. But I would use these guys for the stuff that I can't figure out how to deal with, right? So like thrift stores will still be around, compost bins will still be around. That's all I'm saying. As would your local brush project, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you can compost at home, I mean, I've got a garden downtown. I love composting. It's a great thing. We're not suggesting that, again, food waste is really a bad thing for us, economically, and the contamination is not significant, but it's there, so we'd rather not have it.
Is that life cycle analysis tool? What did you call it? And is that something we can all use?
Mike put something in the chat about it. It's called MEBCALC, MEBCalc.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not free like EPA's, but it covers 9 different criteria, not just one like EPA's WARM model was just global warming only. So it's kind of costly and complex to obtain and learn how to use, but I've been trained in it and did a report that I posted most recently in the comments that compares incineration to landfills for Montgomery County, Maryland. So if you want to get a sense of what its output looks like, you can check out the chapters on life cycle analysis there.
I just wanted to throw in quickly that part of the reason that I'm frankly excited about EcoHub and what Rob and his colleagues are trying to do is that this group, as much as we would like it to be otherwise, this group is very different than most of our culture. And you guys and I and my wife are going to bend over backwards to do the right thing with our waste. Almost no one else is. And like Austin is culturally very different than almost every other city. And so there's just this, I frankly am kind of to some extent done banging my head against the wall of behavior change for all and saying, why don't we make the system such that the behavior almost doesn't matter anymore and that the highest and best thing can still happen. And then dedicated folks like us can work on those upstream changes and changing the other industries around packaging and so on and so forth. And yeah, like people with gardens and people like us are still going to compost outside of this, but there's going to be food waste on the curb.
That was good. Thank you. Rob, could you paste your email contact in the chat?
Sure.
Because I think everybody's going to be churning with ideas and maybe, yeah, well.
May I ask one last question? So you mentioned that the proposed facility would be for handling Philadelphia waste. Is that correct?
Yes.
That would be maxed at Philadelphia waste?
I mean, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to import waste from, far away, because there's plenty of waste in Philadelphia, to handle.
What town are you in, Joy?
Havertown.
Okay, so Delaware County, or
yeah.
So I think that one module of that SMART takes about 60 acres is what I remember. So if you guys can have space for your own waste, you don't need the 4. You can have a smaller version for Delco, let's say.
So can you give the space per number of tons again?
Yeah, so basically a 2,000 ton per day site would be 50 to 60 acres. There are ways we can, consolidate, make it a little bit more compact. And again, if there's a successful composting, situation there, or, something else is being done with food waste, then we don't have to build that. So, a lot of it depends on what's coming in and what the mix is. So basically, each EcoHub, again, depending upon whether you're looking at residential only or a combination of residential and the institutional, commercial, and industrial waste, not like toxic industrial waste, but the part of the industrial waste that's considered municipal, about 250,000 people is kind of like would be fully serviced by an EcoHub at current waste generation figures, which are twice as high as EPA says that they are.
Okay, thanks. I think we have a lot of churning to do amongst ourselves, obviously.
Can I ask one question?
Different combinations of us may be writing to you.
Sure.
But go ahead, Lynn.
Just a question about the pay. I'm glad to see that you're talking about $15 to $20 an hour, which is at least above.
That's the minimum.
The minimum.
Those are the lowest paid jobs. Yeah.
But what I'm thinking about though is that the streets department right now has union labor, and so it would be good, I think, if anything they're doing is being replaced, then it should be with union labor, and they should have union.
100%. No, we're big supporters of unions. And if anybody loses a hauling job due to route consolidation, if that ends up being the thing, we would guarantee them a job at EcoHub, equivalent pay, et cetera. So we want to be, this is a big piece of it, right? Right.
Yeah, I also wondered if you said that's the minimum, so there's a way to advance in the company and.
That's one of the purposes of having the Center of Excellence. If people want to learn new skills and apply for jobs and move up, that opportunity is there.
Great.
I'm going to stop recording. It's 1:30. We can stay on, whoever wants to stay on to continue discussing it.
Okay, thanks everyone. I appreciate your time. Thanks for the great questions.